which means I see it as my accountability to help the clubs, the areas, the divisions, the entire district, anybody who needs help with contests, I'm here to do whatever I can. So we have built a small team. You see the names there. Mike Giglio is the president of Trinity Odessa Toastmasters. More importantly, he was, well, for this session, maybe it's not more importantly in general, but for this session, he was the contest chair for this past spring's international contest for District 48. And so he did an outstanding job of leading us through that. Christine Murin is also on our team, and she is going to be curating questions tonight. So we're going to ask you to allow us to go through the entire presentation without handling any questions. We're going to try to get finished about 40 to 45 minutes, still leaving about 15 minutes for a Q&A session, and she will curate those. So if you have a question, please chat it privately to Christine, and she will organize those, and we'll get as many questions answered as we can at the end. So we will be recording this tonight so that those who cannot make it tonight can possibly see the video later. And we hope it's going to help a lot of people because there's a lot of moving parts in a Zoom contest. So this is focused on Zoom. We will be addressing some other parts of contest, but the real focus is on Zoom, not all the other associated pieces. So with that, I'm going to turn it directly over to Mike Giglio. He's going to begin our presentation. So take it away, Mike.
Thank you, David. When we put together the contest, it seemed like it was a puzzle. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts. And the first puzzle piece is the contest. Yes, you have to have a contest, or in our case of the area contest, we could have a contest. What you're going to hear today is part how-to and part story of how we did it. We accept the fact that there are other ways to do things. This is the way we did it. This is what worked for us. This is not necessarily the only way to do anything. It's not necessarily the best way to do anything.
Oh, he's got a radio mic.
But it works for us.
So
we have a team. We'll talk about the team, the humans that make the contest come together. And the team really has three components. It's got the tools, which we obviously will talk about a little bit, Zoom and some other tools, the processes that the tools come together, and the people that make it all up. That's what the team does. You put the team together and you end up with an online contest. As we've talked about so many times, the online contest becomes the new normal, at least for now. As we said, if you have any questions anytime, chat them to Christine. She will collect them. And then toward the end of the slides, we'll talk about the questions. Putting together the contest and the committee that did the area, the district, the division and the district contests, we had to have a vision. We had a clear vision. It was really pretty simple. We wanted the contest experience to be the best possible outcome for the contestants. If you do the math, the contestants have to work pretty hard to get to your contest. Even if it's just a club contest, they still have to make up their mind to participate in the club contest. If it's an area contest or a division contest or a district contest, those participants have all won a previous contest and you owe them the best possible experience. We thought there were three things we really needed to focus on to make this contest experience the greatest. Number one is everything has to go by the book. We have the rules of the contest. Toastmaster prints a new set of rules every year, and that's the guiding principles for the entire contest. In 2020, Toastmasters also had some back-to-school type contest material where they had online briefings about how to learn to use Zoom, different Zoom tools to transition your contest to be an online contest. So the combination of the rule book from TLI and the, we'll call it the back-to-school videos, were the guiding principles for our contest. Number two, which I think is pretty much important, is the absence of awkward. The reason I bring this up is we participated in, or at least viewed, some of the other area and division contests leading up to the district contest. And we saw an awful lot of processes that, let's just say, they were somewhat awkward and certainly not giving the contestants their best possible experience. So we did a few tuning things here and there to make the contest as unawkward as we possibly can. third thing, of course, is fun. If it's not fun, you really shouldn't bother. If you're not in Toastmasters to have fun, then you probably need to find another hobby. First thing we'll talk about is putting together the team. And here's David to tell you a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mike. Well, obviously, the most important thing for a contest is people. And there are several groups of peoples you need to get that, and we'll go on to the next slide, and it shows the leaders that you need to get. Next slide. There we go. Who do you need? Well, first of all, there are 3 leaders, as you already know: the contest chair, the chief judge, and the contest master. I encourage you to get your contest chair. If you're a club VPE and you haven't got your contest chair yet, that's the first thing you need to do. And then you and they together should get a chief judge, because they'll have to enlist a bunch of other people, and that's the functionaries that are going to pop up in a minute. And it's good to have a contest master, because that helps the contest chair. You sort of share the load. You need to have a lot of people. For the district contest, we had been asked to have 2 judges for each division, total of 10 judges. So there was a lot of people, plus 2 timers, 3 ballot counters, and the all-important sergeant at arms, who becomes extremely important for a Zoom contest. And Mike will tell you all about that. And of course, you can't have a contest without contestants. And if you're talking about your club contest, this is one of the most difficult things, is to get and keep people who are going to actually give their humorous speeches and be involved with table topics. Now, how do we get those people? We used a time-honored process by cold calling them. Yes, I cold called about, I'd say 40 people in order to get 10 judges, the 3 ballot counters, 2 timers. Not 2 timers, 2 timers. And I think we had a pretty good range of people. We had people from both genders. We had people from all the divisions, as I mentioned. We had people who had been in Toastmasters a long time, some who hadn't been in a couple of years, but all had some contest experience, and they were all ready to work at it. Now, you do not need to get Wonder Woman. Neither do you have to have Superman to make this work. You just need people who are willing to follow the process and have some understanding of what their job really is. Now, there's a lot more detail for this. If you go to the district website, district48.org, and you go to the resources tab and click on downloads, it takes you to this page. And there are 5 contest planning documents that will give you some more detailed help on enlistment and some other things. We hope to be adding to that as time goes by, but that's a good set of resources. If you ever have any questions about those things, give me a call, send me an email, and I will give you some help with that. Now, getting contestants is a very important thing. Of course, as I said, you have to have contestants or you can't have a contest. And this is where you have to announce in your club or your area, whatever, this is the date and time, here's where we're going to have it, here's the contest that we're contesting, and make sure people are aware of it. And then you want to encourage all your members to consider being a contestant, because you need to have, about 4 or 5, maybe even more contestants in each contest, because invariably you're going to lose 1 or 2 who drop out the last few days before the contest. So I would always make it a habit of talking with each contestant individually, or each potential contestant, helping them understand that the real value is to learn a lot from the contest. It's not necessarily just to win, but because it's a great learning experience and it is a lot of fun. So once you have your contestants, keep checking in with them once a week or so to make sure they stay with you. So that's basically your team. And hopefully you get a bunch of really ready to go contestants, just like this group right here.
Thank you, David. So you've followed through with David's mission here. You've got all your functionaries, you've got your chief judge, you've got your contest chair, your contest master, and your contestants. Now it's time to keep everybody informed. When an online contest happens, that job of keeping everybody informed is that much more challenging than it is for an in-person contest. You have to have the tools. We've talked about Zoom meetings quite a bit, and we'll talk about it a good bit more. The nice thing about Zoom is, it's relatively easy to use. We found it to be a tool that Even out of the box, it's not that difficult. Number two, a lot of people in Toastmasters are already familiar with Zoom. Some clubs have licenses. A lot of individuals have a Zoom account of their own. And finally, District 48 has, I believe, multiple Zoom licenses, some of which are available for clubs to borrow. So if a club doesn't have its own license, or if someone in the club doesn't have a license, they have the opportunity to use one of the district licenses. A second tool that we used, something called free conference call, for a euphemism of channel 2. During the contest, we realized from watching the other contests that the contest master, the contest chair, the chief judge, and the sergeant at arms sometimes need to communicate with each other outside of the scope of the contest. It would be during the contest, but not where everyone else could hear us. Therefore, we set up a conference call. We'll talk about that a little bit later, about how the free conference call works. The third tool, which you really can't control, but you have to be aware of, is bring your own device. Everybody has their own laptop or their own phone or their own iPad or whatever device they're using to join your contest. And sometimes there's some quirks here and there with those tools that you have to be aware of. When you want to be successful with Zoom, it's pretty simple. Get a free Zoom account now. Obviously, you have one because you were able to join this meeting. Encourage everyone in your club to have a free Zoom account, because if you're going to join a Zoom meeting, that's the best way to do it, is to have the Zoom account and install the Zoom app on your device. Once you get the Zoom account set up, even before you get the account set up, Zoom has a variety of how-to videos on their website that teach you a lot of stuff about using the Zoom tool. I remember back in the old days when I learned software, we had to use something called, what was that, David? A book. Apparently, books are not all that exciting anymore. So now the way we teach ourselves to use software is watching videos. So after you've got your free Zoom account, after you've read the online book that we now call a video, then you get to practice Zoom. You can practice a lot of different places. And like I said, you talk to your district director or your division director about borrowing the division Zoom account. That way, if your club doesn't have a Zoom account, you don't have to buy one. You can borrow theirs. When you go into zoom.us, you look at the tab that says sign up for free. You click on that sign up and it gets you in Zoom. You give it your credentials, and within a few minutes, you have a Zoom account. If someone in your club already has a paid account, use that account. Don't buy one. The club I'm in, we actually are splitting the cost, the annual cost of a Zoom account, with another club. We coordinate that because our meetings are on different days of the week, and our officer meetings are also on different days of the week. So that's another innovative way that you can have full access to a full function Zoom account without having to pay full price. Once you get into the Zoom tutorials there, you look at the options. There are some videos on getting started, about meetings and webinars, Zoom rooms they call them. Go through the tutorials, and they are very friendly, they're very short, they're very easy to follow, and they're exceptionally informative. When would you have an opportunity to practice your Zoom meeting? Obviously, a lot of us do an awful lot of online work. Maybe you have a Zoom account at work. Maybe you have a family reunion. I actually have a family reunion each Friday with a lot of the relatives that I otherwise don't get to hang out with, and we get on Zoom for an hour. Your Toastmasters meetings can be on Zoom. Every once in a while, look at my old high school buddies. We have a little call on Zoom there. Or maybe use Zoom as the tool to organize your contest. You have to have meetings leading up to the contest, so have those on Zoom. One of the concepts we talked about was the Zoom breakout room. Right now, we are all joined to the same Zoom meeting. Each of our computers or phones or whatever devices we have are all in exactly the same meeting. In the case of the contest, you need to have a couple of adjacent meetings going on. When you have the physical contest, these meetings were actually in a different room. You have one meeting with the chief judge and the judges, and the timers and scorekeepers. And then you would have another meeting in a different room for the contestants. You facilitate that in Zoom as well with a breakout room. So all the judges and the chief judge and the other functionaries join the judge breakout room, whereas all the contestants and the contest master join the contestant room. Then when your meeting is over, then you turn everybody back into the main room. This is why what David talked about, the SAA, the Sergeant at Arms, is such a key role, because they are the person that manages your online Zoom meeting. So by all means, if you're going to have a Zoom contest, be sure that your Sergeant at Arms or your Zoom master is a bit more experienced than everybody else in Zoom. The interaction with humans and the processes are still by the book for Toastmasters contests. However, you do have a few extra things you want to work on with your contestants. First thing is you make initial contact with your contestants. Like David says, you need to engage them. If this is an area contest, they're going to come to you from the club. Practice is critical for your contestants. Be sure to communicate to them early that you're going to give them an opportunity to practice, not during the contest. Also communicate to your contestants that when they do present on contest day, minimize distractions. That is, minimize distractions you can hear, minimize distractions you can see. Have them pick a space to present from that is not cluttered and not too busy, so that it focuses on what they're saying and what they're doing and not the world around them. Your contestants are going to have questions. You need to be able to answer those questions. Sometimes they're going to ask questions you may not have an immediate answer to, but it's got to be an iterative process. If you're going to do a bigger contest, like a division contest or a district contest, get your contestants to send you a headshot for the program. Just because it's an online contest doesn't mean you don't have a program. It's just an online program instead of a in-person or in-paper program. Also, there's paperwork either way. The contestants have to fill out to say, yes, I am eligible to be in your contest. And they also have to give you their brief biography. And they need to know the logistics, where to be and when to be there. But of all these things, the one that's the most different and the most interesting, yet the most critical, is for your contestants, the practice. Next group of people Dave will talk about. David, will they be the timers?
Thank you, Mike. Well, you have 2 timers for each contest, no matter what level you're at. One of these, in our case, would display the colors. And in this case, the easiest, probably best way is to have them switch their virtual backgrounds. We'll demo that in a minute. The other timer, of course, is the official timers, and they're the ones who actually keep the time for the contestant. And because people can lose contact, lose their connection with Zoom, both timers were actually recording the time, as well as me as the chief judge. So we actually had some backup there. Now, the first timer name, of course, we used our cell phones as our timing devices. Pretty straightforward. But if you have a stopwatch, whatever you want to use, as long as you have an accurate time counting. The first timer would change his name from his real name to just say timer. That way the contestants did not have any trouble picking out who the timer was and pinning that video so they could see it clearly during their speech. Then when 5 minutes came up, they just changed his virtual background to green, yellow at 6, and red at 7. Now, if you have some people who have trouble seeing or tune in better to auditory cues, they could certainly work with their timers and ask, could you actually call out the colors, green, yellow, and red while you display them? So, work whatever's best for those contestants. You want to make sure they know when those times come up. Now for the judging, as I said, you had to get 2 from each division. For a club contest, you need 5. For an area, I believe it's 7. It's all right there in the rule book. And so I asked each judge individually, will you commit to using the actual judge's guide? I didn't want anybody saying, well, I've been in Toastmaster for 50 years. I'm going to do it by the seat of my pants. We need to follow the process. So they all agreed that they would do that. I made sure that I had email address and phone number for all these people, starting with the judges, because on contest day, if some connection problem occurs, you need to be able to either text or email somebody and get in touch with them somehow, maybe even call them. So make sure you have all the connection information. And we'll get to this more in detail in a minute, but we had a distribution list of myself and the 3 ballot counters for email addresses. And that was so that the judges could send us their ballots. Finally, I made sure I collected the certification forms from the judges, and I think we've got a picture coming up here. It's very simple. It's a fillable PDF. It takes 2 minutes to do it and send it back to you. So I made sure I got those. Do not wait till contest day. Make sure they get them to you. If you're the chief judge, make sure you get those in advance. Now with the ballot counters, all we really had to do is be able to work with numbers. And so same thing, want to make sure we had the email address and phone numbers, because that was going into that distribution list. And when it was time for the contest, we actually started up a separate Zoom login session. We did not depend on the breakout rooms at that point. We just did a completely different meeting, and that's where we counted the ballots. And we'll go through the details of that, but here's the basic equipment that I was using that day. Pretty advanced, but it worked.
Next group of people that you don't think about for the contest necessarily, but they are pretty important, is the stakeholders. That's people that are not your volunteers making the contest happen and not your contestants that are participating in the contest, but people that need to know what's going on in your contest. At the club level, the stakeholders are pretty easy. The president of the club, the vice president of education, and your area chairperson. Those are all stakeholders, because guess what? They need to know that you are doing your contest well, even though it's online, or especially since it's online. They may need some extra hand holding to understand that, yes, you're going to do a good job with the contest. When you go to the area contest, well, guess what? Your area director and your division contest chair are stakeholders, because they are the people dependent upon A, you putting together a great area contest, and B, providing the results to the next level. Because when you go to the division, you guessed it, your division director and your district contest chair they depend upon the results and the quality of your contest. When you get to the district, obviously the district chief judge, which would be David in this case, plus your quality director, plus your conference chair, are all definite stakeholders of your club. Even if you don't have a conference, which we didn't have this year, the conference chair was still one of our stakeholders, the people from the conference chair team, because they needed to be informed. It's all about keeping the right people informed. So as you move into and through your contest, the people that you need the cooperation from are there to cooperate because they know what's going on. You think about it, we've had all this time to put together the contest with all the people and all the technology and all the processes. Now it's time for follow through. This is a week before your contest. You have A, very critical contest practice, and B, game day, the contest itself. First, we'll talk about the contestant and timer rehearsal. You have one session, Zoom session, once again set aside for only your contestants and your timers. There's several key things you do in this practice. Number one, you make sure that each contestant, you can hear them clearly and see them clearly. We had a issue half an hour ago where one of the participants in this particular call looked a little blurry. We mentioned to them, take your glasses cleaning cloth and clean off the camera lens on your laptop. We had to do that with our contestants too, so that all the contestants had the same opportunity. Number two, you talk about clutter. Make sure that the contestant is in a place where you don't have a lot of busyness going on behind them. And then number three, you get them used to the fact that, okay, there's a flow. The contest master is going to introduce you. You're going to acknowledge that introduction. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then you go on with your speech contest. That was the contestant and timer rehearsal.
And then the next night, we got together for our pre-briefing for the judges ballot counters, and again, the timers. Went through all the basic rules like you would in a normal judge's briefing. But one of the most important things we did was we tried out a couple of ways of getting the ballots from the judges to the counters. We had talked about texting. We had actually talked about using a shared document on a Google Drive somewhere. We did test out a couple of things. The thing that worked best for us was the lowest technology, which was simply email the answers. So that's what we just chose to do. And we practiced that. It seemed to work pretty well. We talked about what the timers would be doing, how the ballot counters would be going to be counting. We verified everybody's email and phone numbers one more time. And so it felt like we were ready to go, and we would just have the last briefing right before the contest.
One thing neither David nor I mentioned, but it's pretty important, is that any judge in your contest and any contestant has the option of filing a dispute. Since we're not all in the same room, we gave each of those contestants and each of those judges my cell phone number and David's cell phone number. So if they had a dispute, they knew to contact us directly. So now your game day, your Saturday morning of the contest, and we have the contestant briefing. Since we've already communicated with these people quite a bit, the only thing we really did at the contestant briefing was made the selection of the sequence. The contest master did that through some software on her laptop, and that worked out pretty well. Also, it serves as a roll call to make sure everybody shows up. And at the same time as the contestant briefing is the judge's briefing.
Right. So this is our second or final briefing. We once again just reviewed everything very quickly. And the main thing we did was answer questions, because 2 or 3 people had some last minute questions. What happened about this? What about that? We made sure everybody understood the process they were going to follow. It was actually pretty easy because we had done all the real work on Tuesday night. So we were ready to go at that point, and we felt like as long as we didn't have a total catastrophe, it was going to come out perfectly fine.
So you pull together all those 4 briefings, those pre-briefings, and then you get showtime. We'll talk about how showtime comes together. You have on the left-hand side of the screen here, literally dozens and dozens of people. Each one gets into Zoom. On the right, we have what's called Channel 2. If you happen to be participating in the district contest, you'll notice that the contest master had a set of earbuds on. That earbuds was connected to her phone, and there was a phone call where all 4 of us, the contest master, the contest chair, the SAA, and the chief judge, all dialed into the same phone number, it's called free conference call. Therefore, we could communicate with each other securely and directly. So when I needed to tell David something, or David needed to ask Kelly or me something, we would be sure that we were on mute on the Zoom meeting and then communicate directly to each other with a free conference call. And to set up free conference call is pretty easy. It's like setting up for Zoom. You get a free account. So I just gave this information to everybody, to the 4 of us. I opened it up with a leader code, and therefore all 4 of us were on the same voice-only phone call, and then all 200 of us were on the Zoom meeting. The next thing that we developed for the online contest, I'll call it the verbal handshake sound check. The contestants knew what their sequence was going to be, and the contest master knew the sequence. So for the first speaker, the contest master would call the first speaker by name. We would make sure that that speaker was spotlighted in Zoom so that you saw only that speaker on your display. The contest master would say, "Good morning, Bill." And the contestant would say, "Good morning, Kelly." And that served 2 things. Number 1, it was the handshake that takes place at the beginning of each contestant's speech. But even more importantly, to make sure that we could see and hear the contestant. It turned out that was actually quite critical, because for one of our contestants, we could not hear what they were saying. They'd logged into Zoom, they got into the breakout room, and that worked perfectly fine. But during the verbal sound check, we couldn't hear them. We had the contest master pause the contest. We're having technical issues here. And then I worked with that particular contestant to get them to drop out of Zoom and then log back into Zoom meeting. and then we were able to hear them. This also is part of that absence of awkward, because if someone starts their speech and you can't hear the first sentence of their speech or the first paragraph or whatever, imagine how disconcerting that it would be for the speaker to, oh, okay, I got to rewind and start all over again, because they put an awful lot into kicking off their speech, and to making them do it a second time just wasn't going to work. So that was the power of the verbal handshake and the sound check. Then it's just like any other contest, it's off to the races. You have contestant, moment of silence, contestant, moment of silence, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through your entire list of contestants. And then you get to the end, have a couple of extra moments of silence. And then two things happen. Number one, the contest master begins the contest interviews of the contestants. And number two, the chief judge begins the ballot collection with all the various contest judges. Here's David to tell you how that works.
Yes, and most of our judges didn't look quite this mean, but they were all prepared. They were all ready to go. However, about 2 or 3 days before the contest, I started thinking, if more than a couple of them can't make a connection, I probably need to have some backup judges. So I actually reached out to a few very experienced judges, some of them you may have heard of, and they all agreed to be a backup judge just in case we lost too many judges by connections. It didn't happen, but we had them just in case. So you might want to do that. But in the judging, what they did, of course, was if they did lose their connection, they were supposed to decide if they really could judge that speaker fairly, and if not, they were going to recuse themselves and not send in their ballot. Once they did, of course, finish after all the speakers finished, they filled out the rest of their ballot, determined who their first, second, and third place winners were, and now they've got their ballot filled out. Now, the last thing they would do then is take the bottom part of the ballot, and if you were in an in-person contest, you would rip that off, you'd put it in an envelope and hand it to a ballot counter. In this case, we did that by email, but we just needed the bottom part. They either needed to take a picture of that, or if they didn't have the technology to do that, they could just type their first, second, and third place winners into their email. So we had the ballot box all ready, and each judge then sent their information by email to that distribution list that we'd already created. It all worked pretty well. Within about 5 or 6 minutes, we had all the ballots and we were ready to count. So as we did the counting, there were 4 of us, and we had all gotten the ballots from them. So we went through them one by one in, I think, alphabetical order. And we just simply said, okay, I've got this many points, and we all agreed this is how many points they got. So we did that one at a time. It was a very close contest. It was so close, in fact, we decided, let's repeat this just in case we made an error. So we did it backwards order, and we came up with the same result. So we decided we had a winner. So at that point, I was on the channel 2, as Mike has already mentioned, and I basically gave him, here's third, second, and first place winners, and he took it from there.
So then we had our contest master doing the interviews, and on channel 2, I said, okay, Kelly, this is your last interview. When this person is finished, you say thank you when we're done. She did that, and then she said, okay, and third place is, and then I fed it to her in her ear where she could hear it. She announced the third place winner, and then second place, and then first place. And at that point, we had pulled it off. We had gotten to the point where we had gone to the very beginning and done all the organization. We had done all the practices, all the meetings, all by the book, and got it to the point where we could celebrate, and that we did. We went to the virtual pub and had a virtual beer because it was virtual Miller time. We also opened up the Zoom meeting after the contest and let everybody come off of mute and turn on their cameras. And something pretty funny happened. We had 100 and some odd Toastmasters all together in the same Zoom meeting, and they started talking to each other and chit-chat. And so we left that contest open for probably another 5-10 minutes on the Zoom meeting, just so everybody could socialize and get together, which is exactly what happens, by the way, when an in-person contest is over. So you look at the puzzle and all the pieces came together. Yes, we decided to have a contest. Yes, we knew we needed a team, and to make that team work, we needed tools, we needed process, and we needed people to make the online contest, because that is in fact the new normal. One of the things we talked about doing right now was demonstrating breakout rooms. I don't know if it would be of that much value, but basically I'll explain to you how it works. Is the contest SAA, which in this case happens to be Gene for our meeting this evening, goes into Zoom, and through the administrator interface, it says create a breakout room. And then it creates the breakout room, and then it says, okay, who do you want to be in your breakout room? So Gene could go in there, he'd put David in there, because David is the chief judge, and then maybe he'd add Annie, and he'd add Emma, and he'd add Gordon, and he'd add Jim, and he'd add Pam to the breakout room. And those people would be in the breakout room, so they would be able to hear David, but they would not be able to hear what I'm saying. Everyone here in the main Zoom meeting would still be able to hear what I'm saying. David, is that worth demonstrating to do that, or you want to just go on to questions?
Well, let's go ahead and just go to the Q&A, and then if we have a lot of time at the end, maybe we can go ahead and demo it if people want to see that.
Certainly. So Christine, do you have any questions for us today?
I do. I have, excuse me, I have several. First question, why do we need a separate account for ballot counters instead of a breakout room?
Good question. We could have done that either way, but we knew that the Sergeant at Arms was going to be a little bit busy right at that point. And we just decided we've got another account. We will just open up a new session that was completely outside that session. But you could just as easily have the Sergeant at Arms move the ballot counters and the Chief Judge to a breakout room until they were done. Then, by the way, in these breakout rooms, once we were finished and ready to come back, because it was either Mike or myself or somebody else that was on channel 2, we simply said to the Sergeant at Arms, okay, in this breakout room, we're all ready to come back, and he would move us back. So nothing wrong with using a breakout room there. I'm sure it would work just as well. We just decided to do it the other way, just because we thought it would be a little smoother in our approach.
All right, thank you. And I think it's wise to point out that the Sergeant at Arms is the tech master for the contest. So that's why they are busy shuffling people back and forth into the breakout rooms, and they will be busy.
And you bring up a very good point I just thought about that we didn't really cover here, is for the table topics contest, the breakout room is going to be critical, because at the beginning of the meeting, you'll of course, or at the beginning of the contest, you will start the contest off. And let's say you have 5 contestants that are ready to do their table topics. 4 of those contestants need to go to the breakout room and stay there until it's their turn to speak. So the sergeant, you'll have to have 2 SAAs there. One SAA will clear the breakout room, drag over all the contestants except the first contestant, and then one by one, they will move those contestants from the breakout room to the main meeting so that they can hear the table topics question.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a real good point. You must have a breakout room for the actual contest this time because of table topics. And it's a place where you want to make sure that they're just in there focused and ready to go back in when it's their turn. Obviously, the Sergeant at Arms will need to know the speaking order, and that's why at the very beginning, when the speaking order is drawn, the contest chair or contest master, whoever's running that contestant briefing, tells on channel 2 in our case, but you could just easily do it through chat. Make sure that the Chief Judge, the contest master, the contest chair, and the SAA all know the speaking order, because they're all going to need it at one time or the other. And of course, the Chief Judge, in my case, I passed that on to the judges, the ballot counters and the timers, so they could go ahead and pre-fill out their forms. They'd be all ready with the correct order when the time came.
So we're getting lots of questions about the breakout rooms and contestants. I'm thinking that you just really have answered the next one. In a breakout room with contestants, was David connected to the conference call? And is that how he knew to release the contestants to the main room? So David, do you want to take that?
Yeah, in that case, for the contestants, it's actually, I think,
Kelly was on that call.
Kelly is the one
The
who was
contest
running
master.
that, right? The contest master. But yes,
Yep.
she told Stephen, who was the sergeant at arms, and in Zoom lingo, he's known as the Zoom host. So she said, okay, we're ready to come back to the main session. He just moved them all back to the main session. When I was done with the judges and we had all of our questions answered and we were ready to go, I told Stephen the same thing, and he moved all of us back. So it was nice having that channel too. Again, you could always send that stuff through chat, but it's a little quicker when somebody's got, I had one set of speakers in one ear and the other one in the other ear, and depending on which one was muted, I was able to talk to the right people. So it's nice because it's much more rapid than waiting for somebody to look at a chat because they might not notice it.
And the contest master in particular, she was the recipient of a lot of the conversation or the instructions on channel 2. And she didn't have time to watch the chat. That was the last thing she cared about whatsoever. So being able just to whisper in her ear and tell her what she needed to say or needed to do was exceptionally valuable there.
So I have a couple questions about using the chat for sharing winners. Wouldn't that be more simple?
Sure, nothing wrong with using chat as long as you're just doing a private chat. That would work perfectly well as long as you know who you're sending it to. Make sure you're sending it to the right person, of course.
And like we said at the beginning of the session today, we're not saying this is the best way to do it. We're not saying this is the only way to do it. We're just saying this worked for us.
If you're using the chat for the winners and you're trying to send the results to the contest master is speaking to the audience. They're not necessarily monitoring the chat. So as both David and Mike pointed out, she hears third place goes to speaker number da-da. And now she can announce that to the audience rather than having to try and monitor the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Communication is a little more instantaneous that way and can be done just right at the time needed. Just-in-time communications.
Question about the sergeant at arms in the virtual environment. Which briefings and rehearsals do they attend? Do they attend both the judge's briefing and the contestant's briefing?
That is correct. They were there at everything as well.
So if they're being held simultaneously on the day of the contest.
Well, the day of the contest, the SAA was not participating in either of the Zoom rooms. In one Zoom room was David plus the judges and the timers and ballot counters. In the other room was the contest master, Kelly, and the contestants. The Zoom master, or what's it called? You said the Zoom, what's the Zoom term, David?
Host.
The Zoom host was basically there just to put people into the rooms. They weren't actually in the room themselves.
Right. Yeah, Stephen attended the Monday and Tuesday briefings to make sure everybody understood what he was going to do and so that he knew what his role was in each case. But on contest day, he was having to manage all that and did not have time to go in for those last minute discussions because he already had his marching orders and knew what processes he was going to go through at that point.
I would have to say that his job was probably the most stressful of any of us during the contest. I mean, he was pretty busy. He was having to be on his toes.
For the spring, for evaluations, there would have to be some process set up whereby the sergeant at arms would be in the room and monitor the evaluator contestants. because there's timing involved, and you're supposed to take away their notes after 5 minutes and return their notes to them as they are introduced as the next contestant.
Exactly. Which brings up a whole new level of complication there. And I don't know anyone who's actually figured out exactly how to do that, but I'm sure we'll be looking. Well, we've got a few months to figure it out, but we're going to be looking to TI to bring some pretty solid recommendations. But yes, those are the rules. You have to use a special piece of paper. You need to have those forms. In a Zoom breakout room, it's going to be hard. I mean, ideally, of course, everything will settle down. We'll have in-person contest in the spring. I don't know that's very likely. And so something's going to have to be figured out there at this point. It's going to be a lot on the honor system, perhaps, but hopefully we'll figure out a way to make that work.
And funny you should mention that about notes, especially on one of the TI briefings that I went to about exploiting Zoom. They went into a fairly lengthy conversation, which I didn't see where they were going, and it eventually went nowhere, about how to prevent your contestant from using written notes during the contest. I said, well, at this point, you can't. You know, I'm sitting here in my room. You can't see all the sticky notes that are pasted behind my computer, but I can read any of them. Not that I'm going to, but you can't, in a situation like this, prevent anyone from using any notes. So there's going to have to be some sort of a fairly strong-armed honor system for the table topics contest, or certainly the evaluation contest, unless somebody figures something out.
When someone is in a breakout room, can they chat with someone in the main room?
Probably.
I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah.
No,
I think
can't.
the answer is probably not.
They cannot.
Because your list of participants would be whoever's in that room with you.
Yes.
However, one thing there is people do have cell phones. And if somebody in the main room hears the table topics question, text that to one of the contestants. That's a tough one right there.
You know, and
I hope nobody would do that,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure
And
how technically you can
if
prevent it.
someone's sufficiently devious, they could simply join the Zoom meeting twice, once on
Sure.
their phone, once on their laptop, and use their one meeting to stay out of the chat room or out of the meeting room, the other one to stay in the breakout room. So there's going to be an awful lot of ways that someone could violate the integrity of these sequestered contests, and that's just be something we have to work our way through.
And I'm not sure that was necessarily the gist of the comment. I believe the person was just asking if they were in the breakout room, does the chat work into the main room? And no, it does not.
Okay.
And vice versa.
But that question has come up already in other conversations David and I have been on. Well, how do you prevent this? And at this point, there's just some things you can't prevent.
Several people have asked about Channel 2.
Mm-hmm.
And who were the 4 of you who received the Channel 2 access? So I'm thinking it might be a good idea to go over that again.
I might have a slide about that.
You might.
Effectively, the only people that knew what this number was, and the only people that had the ability to get into Channel 2 was the contest master, which is Kelly, the contest chair, which happened to be me, the chief judge, which happened to be David, and the SAA, who was Stephen. So I gave all 4 of those people, well, I gave 3 of them this phone number. So they called 712-775-7031, and they entered this is my particular conference code in free conference call. And then I entered the leader code, which you can't see. So that opened up the free conference call. And then the 4 of us were free to have a voice call which included only the four of us and nobody else. So unless you happen to notice that the contest master had an earbud, you probably couldn't tell that channel 2 actually existed. There were a couple of moments where I overloaded Kelly's ear with information. I was telling her stuff too quickly or just telling her stuff she didn't need to know at that particular time. So she basically just told me to shut up. I think she was a little bit more polite about it. And you have to be more practiced with channel 2. If there was three things that we were going to do differently, number one would be practice more with channel 2. Because it was pretty easy for me to get carried away telling Kelly stuff she didn't need to hear.
Can you go back to the slide where you had the access for the free conference call?
Mm-hmm. Like
No,
that?
that's your number, but it's freeconferencecall.com or
Oh,
what?
if you
No,
just do
I got the info I needed. It was the other slide.
Okay.
Good, okay.
I'd still like to know how to get a free conference call.
Yeah, if you just take your search engine and do a search for free conference call, you'll be able to find it. And it's just, you sign up online. And when you sign up online, they give you the phone number and then they give you your leader code and they give you your member code.
Any certain brands or something?
Well, free conference call is actually a specific brand. That's the name of the company, but I believe there are others as well.
They're not limited to 40 minutes or anything like that.
I did not come across any particular limit with free conference call. I started using this years ago when my brothers and I were working on some real estate deal. We were selling some mineral rights, and I needed to get all four of us on the phone at the same time. So I went out and got a free conference call, and it's always worked out pretty well. Eventually, after using free conference call for several years, they did send me an email. They said, well, Mike, we'd like you to send us a tiny bit of money if you feel okay. I said, okay. So they guilted me into it. So I sent them a few bucks just to make them happy. And free conference call, I believe, has actually expanded. So it's not just audio calls. I think they have some video calls too, similar to Zoom, but they were kind of late to the party there. So Zoom seems to have sucked up that market. But this worked, like I say, exceptionally well with the four of us. We were instantly able to keep each other informed, and what we said on that channel did not go any further than the four of us on that channel.
Couple more questions. One, is it possible to put the table topics contestants in the waiting room rather than a breakout room?
My understanding is that a waiting room is only active when people have dialed in. Once they get into the main session, I don't think you can send them back to the waiting room, but it's basically the same thing. It's just they're there. It's not really the same thing either, because in a waiting room, you don't really actually have the video and audio. You're just sitting there in limbo waiting for somebody to let you into the room.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
waiting room,
sort of
they're
like
pretty much
standing
in
out
the
in the
dark.
hallway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
But
correct.
I don't think you can go back to that. I'm not certainly sure, but I think that's just for people dialing in. If you have a password, you don't need a waiting room. And if you got a waiting room, you don't need a password. So you use one or the other.
And why can't we use Ballot Buddy for voting?
There's nothing stopping you from using any tool that you feel is sufficiently credible and secure. David used email because it was easy, it was simple, and it was reliable, but there's nothing stopping you from using any particular tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Ballot Buddy, so I don't know if it would be compatible with the official judging forms that in the in-person contest, you would actually put the bottom piece of that ballot page in an envelope and give it to the ballot counter. Because all of this is supposed to be eyes only, and only the people who are supposed to see them see those ballots.
Yeah, security is important, yes.
The other thing is that my experience has been in being in IT for about 40 years. When you've got a low-tech solution, it generally tends to work more reliably than the higher tech solutions. They might have more bells and whistles or be a little bit easier or faster, but we knew that everybody there knew how to use email, that we're not all technically proficient in terms of using various kinds of software. So we just went with the simplest, easiest thing to do. But yeah, whatever you will work, if you've got other software or other processes that you believe will work, as long as they don't violate the rules or the spirit of the contest, then sure, there's plenty of other ways to do these things. And there's other things besides Zoom. We've just found it to be very helpful for us.
Is there a problem with inviting people outside of the Toastmasters membership to the contest? And do they need a separate link?
No, there's no problem with that. Just like when we used to have in-person contests, and one day we'll again, anybody can come. So as long as you're willing to have guests at your contest, why not? So there's no reason why anybody can't be invited. And there's no reason for them to have everybody's going to be in the same room listening to the same people. So there's no distinction.
One of the things we encouraged the contestants to do was when they got the invitation from District 48, it said, feel free to forward that invitation to anybody that you want to come see, where it could be your mother, your brother, your sister, your daughter, or your friends, your neighbor, or whatever. And all you need to do is register through Eventbrite. And when you get the link, you're in the meeting or in the contest.
And the good thing about using Eventbrite is you pretty much know how many people to expect and know how to manage that and prepare for it. Well, we're about out of time. Are we out of questions yet?
I believe we've covered pretty much everything. I have one question specific to the division Zoom accounts, which I'm not sure if you gentlemen want to field or I can field. Regarding the Zoom accounts held by district leaders, can the district leaders share their login, or does the person with the login have to sign in and host each meeting and assign a co-host? For efficiency purposes, can the login be shared?
Let's let Gene answer that question.
Oh, there you go.
Absolutely. The count is to share by the district or the division leader, so the division leader can share that with the area directors. If it's a private email or a private password, change it to something that's not. We set them up to be somewhat generic for the district. So if division leader, if you've changed it into something personal that you don't want to share, I would change it to something that you're okay sharing it with those area directors. Absolutely fine.
Thanks, Gene.
All right. Sounds like
Can I ask one question?
Well, you just did. You want to ask another?
Okay. No, this is Sarah.
Hi,
Okay.
Sarah.
Yeah, I have a quick question. If we don't have access to the breakout room, do you have any recommendation to go around that?
If you're not going to use a breakout room,
Right.
well, you could have your briefings, say, on a day before the contest day, or maybe an hour before the contest time, and just have a separate session. And then you don't need a breakout room for the briefings. You just start the contest and assume that you've got everybody briefed.
Okay.
But for the table topics, if you don't use a breakout room, you're going to have to figure out some other way to get everybody but the first contestant out of that room and be able to bring them back one at a time in a fairly efficient manner so that people aren't waiting 5 minutes for somebody to log back on. So other than breakout rooms by far was the fastest way for us to do our briefings, and I'm pretty sure for table topics. But if you don't, the only reason you wouldn't have access to that is if you're not using Zoom or you don't have a paid, all Zoom paid accounts have breakout room features. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to use that.
Well, I have a paid account, but I don't have the breakout room.
Well, that's the only reason is that you haven't configured that. There's a way you can go to your settings. If you can't find that, let me or Mike know. We can step you through that.
Yeah, it cost me a little bit more if I want to add the breakout room.
Well, I've got the lowest level paid license myself, and I've got breakout rooms, so I don't know why they would charge you more for that. But
Oh, okay. I'll talk to you later, David.
sure, Sarah. Yeah.
And if you find some time, look at the Zoom videos. They'll tell you how to turn a lot of that stuff on.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
did post a question, which was, I must have been skipped with all the other questions. What happens if you don't have, we don't have enough people to fill all these roles? So we're gonna have to go with like one sergeant at arms, only a couple judges, and probably speakers will judge the other contests and vice versa, just in order to fill all that. That there's no issues in regards to that, right? As long as we have the roles filled and we follow the rules as best we can, we should be.
Well,
There's no way we're
technically,
going to have 5 judges. We're not going to have 2 timers. We're not going to have 2 sergeant at arms. That's just not enough people.
are you talking about a club contest?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's a couple things I'd say about that. One is, are there clubs nearby that you could contact and maybe get some help from outside your club? Because frequently clubs will like share judges, for example, and say, you know, if you'll supply us a couple of judges, we'll supply a couple of judges for your contest. So I would encourage you to either talk to clubs nearby you or talk with your area director, and maybe they can help get some more people to fill those roles. As far as having somebody judge a contest and then be a contestant in the next contest, I'm not sure that's totally against the rules. It might be, but it certainly sort of goes against the spirit of the rules. That is, you're not supposed to compete at a contest where you're a judge. Now, obviously, you could say, well, table topics is one contest and humorous speaking is a different contest, and maybe get around it that way. And yes, I realize as a club, sometimes you can't do everything exactly like people would want you to. You just have to do what you have to do. But
I mean,
the first thing I would do is reach out to your area director and other clubs nearby to see if you can get other people on board to help you. And I would certainly be glad to try to enlist people to help you as well, even though I don't even know where your club is or
Well, I mean, it's on the internet, so it's pretty much worldwide. We've signed up a member in the Philippines and like snowbirds that are now like up north right now. So we're barely staying alive in terms of membership. We lost half our members through with COVID. So.
Okay.
But yeah, so it is a struggle to, I mean, we're 8 to 12 people at most during our weekly meetings.
Well,
So
yeah.
this brings up a question that was asked early on about the process. If you don't hold a club contest, you can still send people to the area contest.
Yeah, what the book says is that the club can use whatever method it wants to use to send whatever contestant they want to do to the area contest. So if you have 5 orangutans and they pick numbers in random out of a box and throw those numbers out, and 5 people catch the numbers, and whoever catches the highest number wants to go to your contest, that's who goes to the area contest. Whatever process the club wants. Club does not have a contest to send someone to the area.
So that means we can pretty much do what we want for the contest.
Well,
it also says, go ahead.
There's a caveat there to what Mike just said. If you're not going to have a contest, then you can use any selection process you want to pick your representatives for the area contest. But if you choose to have a contest, it must be held according to the contest rule book. So you can't just make up your own contest rules, for example. So like you pointed out, Steve, you could get judges and other people from just about anywhere. And so we could certainly help you. Your area director could help you. We could form a little team even to help you get some other people to staff your contest so that you didn't have to have so many people doing double duty. I would, unless you're about to have this in the next 2 or 3 days, I would encourage you to consider doing that approach.
We have till the end of the month, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have till the end of the month, and if your area director is willing to be flexible and put their contest off for a few weeks and let you have maybe like the first week in September, you know, you've got even a little bit more time. But, you know, as long as that's coordinated by the area.
Yeah, that was a surprise. We didn't think we needed to do it so early. So that we just found that a couple days ago.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, that's fine. We'll manage. We'll figure it out. Thanks for the help, and I'm sure I'll post something on the Facebook page, and we'll staff it as we need to.
Well, if you run into issues, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We've got people that can be resources to help you. So
Perfect.
don't feel like you're in it by yourself is what I'm saying. And your area director, I'm sure, would be glad to help you as well. Your division director as well.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
And all in all, if you look at it, none of this is easy. It was difficult. However, the quote here says, difficulty is the excuse history never accepts. Yeah, it's a transition. Yeah, it's a little bit of work, but in the end, we believe it's worth it. If you have any questions, talk to Gene, talk to David, talk to me, wherever you need to find, we can help you, because truly we're all in this together, guys. I thank you for participating on behalf of Christine and David. I thank you all for showing up and asking questions and volunteering to help us out and doing whatever we need to do to make it better. So by all means, have a good contest and good luck.
thanks, everyone. And that ends the recording, and we will be trying to get this out onto